千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I would like to extend a warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now, to be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process in the Tao with one another. Now, before we move on to line 9, I want to mention additional thoughts from Lao Tzu along the same line. These thoughts were recorded not in the Tao Te Ching that he wrote, but in the Qing Jing. I realize that not everyone has heard of the Qing Jing, so I want to talk about that just to introduce this classic to a greater audience. Here is the original title. If you are not familiar with the Qing Jing, here is the phonetic translation. Qing Jing, where the Q sounds like CH. The meaning of the title is the Clear Tranquility Classic. Alternatively, it can also be translated as the Clarity and Tranquility Classic. Both are valid. It was not written by Lao Tzu, as I mentioned, but by an anonymous Tao master about 1200 years ago in the Tang Dynasty. It is similar to the Tao Te Ching in that it contains summaries of the teachings from Lao Tzu, which was in turn derived from the ancient Tao that was traditional to Lao Tzu, as well as the Tao master. In those teachings, we find the concepts that we looked at last time have led Lao Tzu to additional thoughts. In verse 5, Lao Tzu taught the following: observe their minds internally, and there is no mind with their minds. So similar to the Tao Te Ching, many of these passages require some explanation to bring them into meaningful context for us in modern times. Here, you can link together this particular thought with what we have talked about, the characteristics of the Tao, by noting that because the Tao cannot be seen in the material world, you have to turn your gaze within to observe the Tao in your own mind. When we do that, we see our own mind in continuous flux, or a state of constant change. This is true pretty much at any time for anybody. Even right now, if you were to turn your gaze within to observe your thoughts, you're going to see the nonstop changings. You've got the fleeting thoughts that come in and out. You've got the swirling emotions. As you're listening to this talk, you will probably gain some insights. There may be parts that are confusing. You will think back to the past at points, have memories, and you may try to recall something and realize that you have forgotten it. There's all kinds of things happening in the mind. The changes in one's mind are a reflection of the never-ending changes in the external world. Now, in the very center of this mental maelstrom, we find the Tao. In the Tao, there is tranquility, there's constancy. It's the quiet, like the eye of the storm. Similar to the eye of the storm, everything may be swirling around in this chaotic mixture, but at the very center, in the eye of the storm, there is peace, there is quiet. Then, Lao Tzu goes on to say, observe their forms externally, and there is no form with their forms. What this is saying is that having observed ourselves mentally by turning the gaze within, and with our understanding of the never-ending changes, we can now look beyond the surface appearance of our bodies and see the change that is occurring all the time, despite the body seemingly remaining the same from one moment to the next. We can begin to understand that even if you and I cannot perceive the change that the body is going through, we know it is happening all the time. We know about the metabolic processes at work every minute, every second. We know about the countless cells of the body that are created, that are engaged in their individual tasks, or dying off and being discarded by the body. Now, recall to mind that when we observed internal thoughts, you see the mental maelstrom, and then in the middle of that, you see the eye of the storm. Bring that to the conception of what you observe with your body, with the constant changes the body is going through, the aging process that is happening even now. In the center of all these changes is the constant you that remains the same. That is, no matter how much you change, no matter how you change your looks, no matter how much you age, you are still somehow the same you as always. That's the constancy. That's the unchanging quality in the middle of incredible change. Next, Lao Tzu wrote about how observe their things from afar, and there's nothing with their things. That is, when you turn your attention away from yourself, mentally or physically, to look at everything else, you can have a perspective. For instance, even now, you can observe yourself as if you are watching someone else. You can observe the things around you. You note that the same principle of change, transience, and impermanence applies. Nothing remains the same. Physical objects may provide the appearance, the surface appearance of constancy, that they're the same from one moment to the next. Human perception oftentimes provide that illusion of permanence. Not just objects. You look at other people, they seem to be the same person from one moment to the next, even though intellectually, you know their bodies are going through constant change as well. You look outside, you see a building, it seems the same from one moment to the next. You look beyond the building to the environment, it seems to be the same from one moment to the next. But then, in a large enough time scale, perhaps after a few years, we may find ourselves surprised that everything has changed. People look different. Buildings come and go. Sometimes they get renovated, sometimes they get demolished. Even the environment is not quite what it was before, what it still is in our memories. I have that experience myself when I visit my childhood homes, my teenage neighborhood, and yes, absolutely, the environment has changed. While I was living through childhood and teenage years, I thought that it was constant, but that was the illusion. So now, Lao Tzu continues on with this concluding remark. Since these three are empty, one can only see the emptiness. These three he's referring to is the mental self, the physical self, and the material things. So let's bring it all together. We started out talking about the Tao being unseen, unheard, and untouched. Then we continue to this thought that the mind, the body, and material things are all empty. That actually brings us back full circle to the Tao, the emptiness that cannot be seen, heard, or touched, the ultimate void that contains infinite potentialities. Now you can see how this is all linked together. This translation that you see in this slide comes from my book, The Tao of Tranquility, which is devoted to the Qing Jing. It contains much more, like this next level teaching that we have talked about. There are many other verses of the Qing Jing, plus integration with Buddhist Dharma for anyone who may be interested in exploring further. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.